Hello, this is episode 325, where we're chatting about fasting and keto and how they work together, the benefits and downsides to fasting, how fatty coffees affect a fast, how fasting helps with excess weight loss, and so much more. You can ask me questions by going to healthfulpursuit.com/contact, fill out the form, submit, and that's how your questions get answered on an upcoming show. You can catch up on previous podcast episodes and notes from today's show by going to ketodietpodcast.com. If you're unfamiliar with how to access show notes on your app that you're using to listen to today's show, you can go to the Google machine, type in the app that you're using, and then show notes and find the show notes for today. I will be including a link to my book and a couple of other resources that we talk about today. I will be reading from my book, The Keto Diet, which is now an audiobook. I think that was released a couple of years ago. So I'm reading from The Keto Diet, my voice, my words. Let's do this thing. Hey, I'm Leanne Vogel, and you're listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. I've put together a free 21-page guide on achieving weight loss on your keto diet if nothing is working, as a little thank you for being here today. Grab your free guide at ketoforwomen.com to get the steps you need to overcome the hurdles standing in your way. Okay, so on today's episode, I'm going to be reading from my book, The Keto Diet. That's my first paperback. And when we first set out to record the book, I wanted to be the one to do the audio recording for the audiobook. Now, this was around the same time that I was relaunching Happy Keto Body, just starting the writing process for my second and third paperback books, and trying to finalize all the insurance details for moving on to a sailboat full time. I was also recording episodes of the podcast, creating blog post content, and just being a human on planet Earth. So you could say that I bit off a little bit more than I could chew. So I ended up finding someone awesome to record the audiobook for me. I kept the few first chapters that I recorded. So that's what you'll hear today. Me reading the Keto Diet paperback. But if you pick up a copy of the real audiobook on Amazon or Audible, just type in The Keto Diet Leanne Vogel to find it. You'll hear a different voice, but today it's all me. And if you're like, dang, this book sounds awesome, you can pick up a copy of my audiobook on Amazon or Audible. So let's cut over to a snippet from the audio recording of The Keto Diet. Fasting and ketosis, the power couple. Fasting is a scary word. I remember when my third grade class collected pledges for a fast that we were going to perform at school in support of our class's sponsor child. The plan was to drink only water until we broke our fast at the end of the school day with a pizza party. All the kids did really well, except for me. I lasted until 9:35 a.m., officially 10 hours of fasting, when I dug some change out of my backpack and inconspicuously chose the richest possible treat out of the vending machine. From then on, fasting scared me. I wouldn't have dreamt of skipping breakfast, let alone going a whole day without food. As a hypoglycemic, I thought I was one of those people who just couldn't go long periods without food. End of story. But looking back, my inability to fast was tied directly to the fact that I was an intense glucose burner, relying heavily on 6 to 8 meals a day to keep things balanced. Don't let fasting fool you like it did me. It's not nearly as scary as you might think it is. In fact, it's downright awesome. Intermittent fasting, also known as IF, is a practice of going 16 to 24 hours without food, without struggling through it. When you're in ketosis, going 16 to 24 hours without food is effortless. Your blood sugar is stable, which instantly reduces the need to eat every 3 to 4 hours. And without the ups and downs of blood sugar irregularities, the body isn't signaled to eat to make up for blood sugar lows. It all boils down to the fact that when we're in nutritional ketosis, you have limited access to energy stored in your body fat. Sure, our bodies will use dietary fat for fuel too, but even when we don't eat, we're constantly being supplied with fuel that's stored on our body. Which means that fasting as a fat burner is easy and natural. When you don't need extra fuel, you don't get hungry. You also don't experience traditional hunger symptoms like anger, dizziness, lightheadedness, or fatigue. If you're in this for weight loss and planning to restrict calories as well as practice IF, please don't. It's one or the other. Combining calorie restriction with IF may cause health imbalances, can affect your body's ability to become fat adapted, and will make you downright miserable. Fasting comes with tons of benefits. Weight loss without slowed metabolism, which happens with calorie reduction dieting, stable blood sugar, improved insulin sensitivity and lowered insulin levels, loss of body fat, lowered blood pressure, cholesterol levels, and triglycerides, reduced inflammation, increased levels of ketones, which has a whole host of benefits, higher levels of human growth hormone, which aids muscle growth and fat burning, reduced free radical damage, which means slower aging, lowered risk of cancer when fasting is paired with a reduction in glucose, which fuels cancer cells. Note, please don't think that the more and longer you fast, the better off you'll be. Fasting should be part of a balanced, fat-fueled lifestyle. If fasting doesn't feel good or you're forcing yourself to fast, stop, drop, and listen to your body. Interested in fasting? Use RFL lattes to extend your fast. The recipe is roughly MCT oil plus cacao butter wafers, hulled hemp seeds, collagen tea equals a RFL latte. I've also included the recipe in the downloadable PDF. Maybe you've heard of all the amazing things that apple cider vinegar can do for you. If you have not, let's review. It can balance healthy blood sugar, banish cravings, and encourage fat loss. It can improve protein absorption and digestion by helping you break down animal protein so you can use those nutrients more effectively. It can help you stabilize healthy blood sugar, which helps improve energy and mood. An aid in the healthful aging process, has been shown to lower morning glucose, fasting glucose, and help stabilize blood sugar by increasing the ability of our muscles to take up sugar from our blood. Okay, so you could just go to your pantry and chug some apple cider vinegar. No, don't do it. It'll burn your esophagus. So you always have to mix it with water. And here's the thing. I don't know about you, but when I have a liquid supplement, I will 9 times out of 10 forget to take the stuff. And that's why I love Paleo Valley's apple cider vinegar complex, because not only does it have apple cider vinegar, but it also has turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, lemon, all organic ingredients to further support all the benefits of apple cider vinegar and more. If you are encouraged to take the stuff and you just don't think that you'll drink the liquid, you can head on over to paleovalley.com and load up on a couple of bottles of apple cider vinegar complex and whatever else that catches your eyes. I personally love the superfood bars. They're just amazing. Enter the code KETO at checkout to receive 15% off your first order. Again, that's paleovalley.com and use the code KETO at checkout for 15% off your first order. My anti-fasting message. I just told you how great a practice fasting is, and now I'm going to say the exact opposite. Why? Well, because we are all different, and not just different from one another, we're different from the people we were yesterday and the people we'll be tomorrow. There are days where fasting feels fabulous in my body, and there are days I can't go past 9 a.m. without a full keto breakfast. I feel like many of us women have an all or nothing mentality. If we commit to fasting, gosh darn it, we are going to do it every day to cash in on the benefits, even if it means crappy sleep, endless hunger, reduced ketones because of the stress we're putting on our bodies, less energy, imbalanced hormones, and more. If we read that it is good and we think we should be doing it, we do it, regardless of the price we have to pay. So, what do we do about this fasting thing? We listen to our bodies. Don't feel like fasting today? Don't. Have breakfast like a big salad, bacon and eggs, your body, your choice. Now, a RFL latte doesn't count as breaking your fast. Drink your morning RFL latte or RFL to give your body the nutrients and fuel while continuing with your fast. Continuing to drive ourselves into a fasted state, especially when our bodies are healing from hormonal imbalance like thyroid, adrenals, sex hormones, you name it, can make the situation worse. This was my experience, which is why I now fast only when it feels right. Today, I've been fasting for 16 hours and I'm not even thinking about food. But yesterday was an all-out keto fest, morning to night, and it happens. If you're implementing a ketogenic diet in hopes of healing your body from imbalances such as adrenal dysfunction, hypothyroidism, or low sex hormones, it may be best for you to skip the IF practices or, at most, practice a 16-hour fast when it's convenient and totally natural for you to do so. It's also important to pay attention to your mental and emotional health during fasting. As someone with a history of disordered eating, following a strict intermittent fasting practice really didn't work for me. I found myself obsessing about my next meal, fantasizing about all the fabulous things I would eat, and calculating when I could eat them. I calculated fasting hours so frequently that I started dreaming about it. Nightmares with clocks and fasting schedules became my reality at least 3 times a week. And when I finally did break the fast at the planned time, I ate until I was so full that I could barely move. Forget about listening to my body. I ruled what I ate, when, and how much. If you too have a tense relationship with dieting or food restriction, or had an all-out war between your body and food at some point in your beautiful life, intermittent fasting may trigger something in you that you don't want to experience again. I don't want to scare you away from fasting altogether. There are some great benefits to it, but keep in mind that you don't have to do it every day. Go with the flow. Listening to your body to create a keto intermittent fasting approach allows you to cash in on the IF benefits and use it as a tool to simplify your life, while also avoiding its potential pitfalls. For a beginner guide to intermittent fasting, see figure 3.6 in the PDF. Note, some benefits of IF may be realized only during a 20 to 24-hour fast, but this may be true only for those not in ketosis. When a glucose-fueled person practices IF for 20 to 24 hours, they experience the IF benefits as soon as their body starts creating a touch of ketones. The fat-adapted, whose bodies are already creating ketones, may start seeing benefits after just 16 to 18 hours. If you are on medication, have type 2 diabetes, or are pregnant, breastfeeding, or underweight, please chat with your healthcare provider about whether IF is a good strategy for you before you go for it. Ladies, take note: fasting, hormones, and butter coffee. When I first started an intermittent fasting practice, butter coffee was all the rage. If you aren't familiar with butter coffee, it's a blend of butter, MCT oil, and coffee that you consume in the morning instead of breakfast. The concept behind the fatty drink is that drinking it in the morning on a fasting day provides the body with the nourishing benefits of grass-fed butter and other healthy saturated fats while keeping blood sugar stable, reducing hunger, extending a fast, and generating a boost of ketone bodies. It's a way to practice IF without having to go oodles of hours without food. I can't do butter, so I created a dairy-free mixture of coconut oil, MCT oil, and coffee. It was good, but after a couple of days of drinking it, I started getting the shakes. Each day after drinking the mixture, my mind began racing. I grew dizzy and lethargy set in shortly after. To top it off, my appetite slowly increased until the drink would hold me over for about 30 minutes at most. This continued for weeks. I tried replacing the coffee with herbal tea and the fats with coconut-free options, but I saw no change in my symptoms. My experience inspired me to create a video on butter coffee-based intermittent fasting, which is now one of my most popular videos on my YouTube channel, Healthful Pursuit. As soon as I shared my symptoms, women began speaking to me about it. Turns out a lot of us were suffering. So how do we get the benefits of fasting, enjoy butter coffee, and avoid the symptoms? The solution came when I realized that my symptoms were alleviated when I added a touch of whole food protein and carbohydrate to my butter coffee. Instead of the message, "Danger, only fat is coming in," that the fat-only coffees had been sending my body, it sent my body the message, "It's okay, we have fuel, fat, protein, carbs, it is safe." And it did so without supplying so much fuel that my insulin levels spiked to process it. So I was able to keep fasting safely. Thus, the Rocket Fuel Latte was born. You'll find the recipe in the downloadable PDF. From that day forward, I started adding 3 grams of carbs and just under 10 grams of protein to my fatty coffees, and within a couple of days, I felt completely different. Within 2 weeks, I couldn't believe I'd gone that long with a standard fat-only drink and the misery that accompanied it. Adding a touch of whole food carbohydrates and proteins to butter coffee influences leptin, the hormone that makes you feel full. I think the fat-only experience may play around with leptin, making the body a bit confused. Remember how leptin sensitivity can change on a low-carb diet? My thought is that having a fat-only drink in the morning lowered the level of leptin in my body. So I wanted more food even though I was physically full. We know that a slight increase in carbohydrate intake can help us become more sensitive to leptin, making us feel satiated longer. While I'd love to jump into a lab and test my theory, it's not in the cards. I, and so many in the Healthful Pursuit community, have had great experiences fasting with Rocket Fuel lattes, and I hope you will too. But I encourage you to test it out for yourself. Try a fat-only drink in the morning, the classic coffee with grass-fed butter and MCT oil, or if you're sensitive to dairy, with cacao butter oil or grass-fed ghee. Give that a try for a couple of days, then switch to a rocket fuel latte. See how you feel. And if you test your blood glucose and ketones, watch those ketones increase and your blood glucose begin to fall. Okay, so it seems like the whole health and fitness world is talking about glucose these days, and for good reason. Poor glucose control is tied to weight gain, fatigue, sexual dysfunction, diabetes, Alzheimer's, heart disease, stroke, and so much more. Now, you may think that poor glucose control is all due to the common stuff like sugar, potatoes, refined things, but this is custom to the person. So, how do we track our glucose so that we can find out which foods we should and should not be eating? Well, Levels is an app that takes continuous glucose monitoring mainstream. In addition to providing you with CGM sensors, the Levels app interprets your data, scores your individual meals, and allows you to run experiments across different inputs like diet, exercise, or even new fasting protocols that you're testing. They're backed by a world-class team, including a Stanford-trained MD, top engineers from SpaceX and Google, and a research team that includes legends in the space like Dr. Dom D'Agostino and Dr. David Perlmutter. I've been using Levels since September 2020 and have been able to determine which carbs don't set me off, like having beans, medjool dates, figs, and oranges on my ketogenic diet, where I can stay metabolically healthy and in a ketogenic state while indulging in a couple of sweet treats. They're currently running a closed beta program with a waitlist of 115,000 people, but you can skip that line and join Levels today by using the link levels.link/KDP. Again, that's levels.link/KDP. I do believe that women may have a different experience with fasting than men. While there are studies that claim fasting doesn't have an effect on women's hormones, there are two reasons why those studies may not apply to women in everyday life. The first is that a 14-day period of fasting, the most common in studies, is likely not going to make a large impact on a woman's overall hormonal balance. The longest-term fasting studies tend to look at those who fast during Ramadan, the month during which Muslims refrain from eating from sunrise to sunset. Studies would be more likely to catch changes in hormones if they looked at women who have been practicing intermittent fasting for at least 3 months. The second is that many fasting studies are done on obese women. Fat cells create sex hormones, namely estrogen, and store these hormones and others. So when fat cells begin to shrink because fasting is causing these women to use body fat for fuel, the women in these studies become less able to produce estrogen. But at the same time, the shrinking fat cells are releasing stored hormones into the bloodstream to be discarded. It can take months for the process to level off. So when these individuals receive blood tests throughout a study, the results show a false hormonal landscape. Testing for hormones even a month into a fasting period isn't likely to show the whole picture. Given my experience with butter coffee, it makes sense to me that some women may react negatively to having just fat in the morning. If a woman of reproductive age goes days having only fat in the morning, fasting through the afternoon, and follows that fast with a calorie-restricted diet, ketogenic or otherwise, it could lead to imbalanced sex hormones and an interruption in fertility due to lack of sustenance. After all, the female body is, from nature's perspective, a complex baby-making machine. Growing babies requires tons of nutrients and calories, and if the body believes there won't be enough to support a baby, the reproductive system can shut down as a protective mechanism. And while fat intake is crucial for health, so is a balance of protein and carbohydrate. While many women can go weeks, months, or even years practicing a protocol of butter coffee, fasting, and calorie restriction with absolutely no effect on their sex hormones, others are not so lucky. If you've recently adopted a butter coffee practice and have noticed symptoms quickly following, it could be a sign that your body doesn't like this approach. By switching to a rocket fuel latte and adopting the previously mentioned IF strategies, which encourage you not to restrict calories while fasting, your body will receive signals that there are enough nutrients to go around, so it's safe to get pregnant. Even if you don't want to get pregnant, it's important for your body to feel that it's safe to do so. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I'll include a link to my book, The Keto Diet, in the show notes. So if you want to check that out, you can. If not, that's cool too. But I hope you will come back next Sunday for another episode. Sunday, August 1st, we have episode 326, where I'm interviewing my new friend, Michael Rutherford, on looking at your thyroid results way differently. And then Sunday, August 8th, episode 327. It's a solo episode. I haven't done one of these in a while. It's a Q&A. I'm going to be answering your questions on cortisol, PMS, menopause, and macros, and so much more. Ooh, this episode is good. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Okay, bye. Thanks for listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. Join us again in a couple of days to discover more keto for women secrets for your fat-fueled life. Music for the Keto Diet Podcast provided by Yechi. Follow Jacob on Instagram at Yechi_official and on Spotify as Yechi. That's YECHI. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, recipes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representations or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.